Hey, good afternoon. This is Karen Roberson, and I'm happy to see you all here this afternoon. And we're going to look at 1099 processing within Sage 100. And for those, there we go. For those of you who don't know me, I am Karen Roberson, and I have been with Oasis for over 30 years now, and worked with Sage 100 all of those years. And prior to that, I worked with other ERP systems. So been around the block a few times. And so I'm going to start off today. We're going to do a little bit of housekeeping, and I'm going to jump into that real quick. So you all are all muted. If you have any questions, down, typically it's at the very bottom of your Zoom screen. There is a Q&A button. If you click on that, it'll open the question and answer little window, and you can type in your questions. I'll try to keep an eye on it as we're going, and if there are any that I don't get to, or maybe I don't know the answer to, then I'll make sure I follow up with you afterwards. And then next, we're going to look at some changes to the 1099 forms, which, as you'll see, isn't much. And I'm going to talk to you about the Sage 100 updates, and I want to look at 1099 vendor history with you. And with that, we are going to actually get into Sage 100. So these others are just going to be in the PowerPoint. And then after we go through Sage 100 and actually go through the 1099 processing, we'll talk about printing 1099 forms and make sure we've answered everybody's questions. So again, I thank you for attending today. So first thing, there really weren't any changes to the 99s this year. What has affected us, at least in the Sage world and in many softwares, last year, when you had an individual that you had to file a 1099 for, the IRS created separate boxes for their first and last names, and Sage did not have any updates for that. Excuse me. Atrix had gotten an exemption for it, so anybody who wanted them separated had to do it manually in the Atrix grid last year. The other thing that happened last year is that the IRS started using forms that did not have the year pre-printed. So if you've got leftover forms from last year that did not say 2023, you can use them this year. So that's a good thing. And there are 4 1099 forms that Sage generates: the 1099 NEC for the non-employee compensation, the miscellaneous, the interest, and the dividend. And there were no changes to those. However, you still need to be aware of what version of Sage 100 you are running. If you are on an unsupported version, it's very likely that the Atrix program that generates the 1099s will not work on your system. And if you are not current on your subscription, then you also won't be able to run them. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So the supported versions of Sage 100 are for the current version of 2024. You can have the Atrix will run on any of the product updates, but in order to run with the newest updates for the individual's names, then you have to be on at least 2024.1. So it's product update 1 and it's also called version 7.3. There will be a new release coming out at the end of this month for product update 2, which will also have those changes. And if you are running on version 2023, then in order to have the separation of those names, you have to be on at least product update 4. That was released in July, and the that version or the one that's going to be released at the end of this month will allow you to make those changes. And if you are on version 2022, it does allow you to run the 1099 forms, but none of the product updates included those changes for the individual's names to be separated. So there will be an IRD that is due to be released around about the 20th of this month. If from everything we can see, it doesn't appear that that is going to be a requirement. So by the time you're ready to process your 1099s, we will be we'll have the latest information and know more about it. Okay, so this is just really more of a recap of what we just talked about. So for 1099 processing with the newest updates, you do need to be on some of the latest product updates. So on version 2024 or 7.3, you need at least product update 1. And if you're on 2023, you need at least product update 4. And that we'll take a look in a little while so that you can see in the Sage 100 what the vendor screens look like with those changes. And if you are running anything before that version, so 2022.6 or prior, then you're just going to have to manually parse those names. And again, when we get to that screen, I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, something else that is not new, but it was new last year and bears repeating. The threshold used to be that if you had 250 documents, then you had to do electronic filing. That has been reduced to 10 documents. So that they're combining your W-2 and 1099 documents. So if you're thinking, ooh, I only have 4 W-2s and 3 1099s, then you're under the limit. But if you have like 6 W-2s and 6 1099s, that gives you 12 documents total, and you are not under the threshold. So you would have to do the e-filing. And again, we are going to talk a little bit more about that. And then here is just a screenshot of what happens if you've got an individual, and you can see over here, Roger W. Lerner, this is an individual. If it knows that they're not a business, so you need a first and last name, so you get a message in Atrix. And you have to go back and manually put those in. Okay, so as far as Atrix is a third-party software. It runs with many different softwares, and Sage 100 is just one of them. And what happens is the information is stored in Sage, and then as you process 1099s, there is a workstation component that has to be installed, and that is Atrix. Oh, and somebody's let me know I didn't share. Oh dear. Give me just a moment. I don't see a share button. Oh, my apologies. I'll make sure that you all get sent the PowerPoint. The only thing that was really visual was this one where I was showing you the screenshot when you're in Atrix. So if Roger Lerner, this is where I was showing you, he's an individual, it's not a business. He's got his social security number. So since he's been registered as an individual, you have to supply the first and last name. So if you don't have one of the latest versions where you can enter that on the vendor, then when you process the 1099s, it'll come up with a message like this, and you'll just have to manually enter them. And again, when we go into Sage, I'll be able to show that to you. Okay, so back to when you're running Atrix. So there is a portion of Atrix that has to be installed on your workstation. So anybody who will be running 1099s or W-2s or any of the other payroll year-end and quarter-end reports, you've got to have Atrix installed. So something to be aware of is, you know, like if you've got a new computer this year, you know, double check to make sure before you're ready to process the 1099s that you've got Atrix installed. And then also be aware you've got to have administrative permissions to be able to install on somebody's computer. So we may need the assistance of your IT people. Okay, and as I mentioned earlier, you must be current on your software maintenance plan with Sage. If you're not, then when you try to run it, it'll give you that notification. And you do have to have an active internet connection because you've got that portion of the 1099 program that works on your computer, but then the information gets transferred and it actually gets processed on the Atrix system. And something else I'm going to show you, you have to already enabled in your accounts payable options the fact that you want to track your 1099s. And that is a good segue. Let's go into Sage 100. That is here. And I want to show you in your accounts payable options. So this is in your setup menu. There is a setting over here for 1099 reporting. So if you've not processed 1099s before, make sure that that is checked and make sure that your default 1099 calendar year is set to 2024. And all is not lost if you've not set that up before. When we go look at the vendors, I'll show how you can manually enter that information. And then one other setting I want to share with you. In the history tab, there's a setting down here about how many years you want to retain that 1099 payment history. Yeah, 99 is a bit much, but in my sample data, that way I know it doesn't matter how far I go in my years, I'm going to keep that history. Okay, so now let's go into vendor maintenance. And I created a custom lookup for myself called 1099. And if anybody is not familiar with how to do that, you can just contact me or our help desk, and anybody can help you get this set up. It's just a quick way of double checking. So I've got my vendor information, and then I added my 1099 columns to this so that I can take a quick look. So I can see I have 3 vendors that are set up. I've got 2 businesses and 1 individual. This shows me that these 2 have an NEC form and this one has a miscellaneous form. And it shows me if I've got their tax ID or social security numbers. Just an easy way to double check quickly. So let's start off with tax consultants. And over on tab 2, bigger, there we go. I have the most recent update for version 2024. So when you look at your vendor screen, it may not look like this if you don't have some of the latest updates. So we start off, if you've got their W-9 form on file, you can click that checkbox. So that is another way for you to quickly know that you've got it. And then you have to define whether they're a business or an individual. If they're not getting a 1099, you just leave it at none. And then you define which form, whether it's a miscellaneous, interest or dividend, or a non-employee compensation. And then based on whether you said they were a business or an individual, you'll have your taxpayer ID number. So I'll just real quick switch that to individual, and you'll see that now I don't have it. I'm going to cancel that. And we'll look at an individual later, and you'll see how it does actually format it with Social Security number. And then based on which form you've defined, you specify which box theirs applies to. And I have here, this is a 1099 name. So this is my vendor type of a business. And so I have the opportunity here to type a 1099 name. Now, some of you might also have a version that calls it a DBA name. What that does is, see here, I've got tax consultants, comma, Inc., period. When you process the 1099s, the IRS does not want any of those characters, no, nothing but your letters. So the comma and the period will have to be removed. So this just allows you to do that ahead of time. And then if you've got a different address for their 1099 reporting that they've given you, you can enter that here. So that way, if you've got purchase order, it doesn't affect your purchase orders. Or if you use remit addresses for your checks, you can have something totally different from those two. All right, now let me go to an individual so you can see the difference there. And that is this one. Not. Roger learner. Okay, so now this person's been defined as an individual. Now I have separate fields for the first name, middle name, and last name. So that way, even if they've got a different business name, but they are still an individual, you have to report them as such, you can enter that here, and that will flow through automatically to your Atrix grid. Okay, let's mention real quick, this first box over here, payer made direct sales of $5,000 plus. If that is the situation, then you need that checked on their 1099 form. You can click that box. And FATCA, it's foreign something, I don't remember what. In the years that those have been added, I haven't had anybody who has used those yet. Then the next thing I want to show you is down here we have a button for the 1099 history. So I click that because this one has been defined as a miscellaneous form type. And because in my setup options, I told it I was in calendar year 2024, that's what popped up automatically. But I could go back and look at prior years if I had that history there. Now, this is where I was telling you, if you, and I see this a lot, you get a new vendor and you process their invoice and maybe even their payment, and then you realize, oh, they should have been set up as 1099, it will only record any payments from that point forward. So if you need to adjust anybody's payment history, you can manually type that in here. So I'm going to show you in just a moment how to run the vendor history report for your 1099 vendors. And if the history you've got for the vendor doesn't match what's in here, you can just manually type that in. And you can also, sometimes you might have somebody who has multiple types of payments. You know, maybe you've got somebody who gets royalties and you also pay them rent. So it will, when you put in an invoice, it will default to what you have defined here for their default form and their default box. But on the invoice screen, you can override that particular invoice, and then it will automatically populate the right box. I hope that makes sense. And if not, don't forget, you've got that Q&A. I am double checking, make sure I didn't miss anything here. It looks like everything. So I want to show you, there is a payment history report. And this is very useful. You could go ahead and start looking at this now just to make sure you've got everybody set properly. And what I like to do is just set it to run by the date. I got to change 9 to 2024. So I run it for the whole year. And then I come over here and I tell it to print 1099 vendors only. So let's take a preview of that. So that will show me all of my activity. Now, notice this is sorted by, or it's in order of check number. Now, I don't have it grouped by vendors. So believe it or not, I did that on purpose, because if I just said, make sure you change your sort report by, you probably wouldn't remember. Maybe now there's that extra trigger to help you. And remember, you've got these preview checkboxes and the print checkbox. So it brings you back to that screen so you don't have to reselect everything. So see there now, it shows me for each of the vendors what my total payments for the year were. And I can compare that to the 1099s. What a lot of people like to do is do a trial run of their 1099s and compare this report to that trial run. And I will show you how to do that. So the Form 1099 tax reporting, that is in your Accounts Payable Reports menu. There are three things that I look at when I'm coming in here. The first is to make sure that I set it to the right form type of what I'm processing right now. The second is I make sure that I've got the right calendar year. And then I look at my minimum year to date and I make sure I set those appropriately. And just for our illustrations, I'm not going to put a minimum in there. And then all of this information comes from your company maintenance, so you shouldn't have to do anything here. So I'm going to go ahead and accept. And at this point, what Sage does is look to see if you have Atrix installed on your computer. If you don't, you'll get a message that you need to install it. If you do have it installed, but you don't have the latest version, then you get a message about your update. And I was playing with this on yesterday's webinar, so I'm going to say no to use my work in progress. So if you didn't have the latest update, it's going to go through and give you a couple of prompts, and you may need your IT assistance if you don't have the proper permissions to be able to download and install the latest updates. And just in case there's anybody here who has payroll, it will also at the same time update your payroll forms and reports. Okay, so it takes you through a wizard. It's pretty easy. After you do it a few times, you're going to feel like you are a pro that's been doing it for years. So this is where you do have an opportunity to test drive. So, just run through the process and it will not hurt anything at all. And you can choose to do it with just the first 25 vendors, or you can say do it with all of your vendors. And I want to show you all the way through as far as I can without having an Atrix account, and start processing my 1099s. And that's okay. You can do that. And then it's from your company maintenance. It's double check to make sure you've got the right EIN in there. And then if you have multiple companies under the same EIN and you need to combine files, you can do that here by saying yes. I don't, so I'm just going to say no. And then this is where it pulls some of your information from company maintenance again. And I'm going to do next so you can see what will happen. Even here, you can't have any of those special characters. So I've got to come up here and get rid of that period on my corp. And then if I do next again, now it's going to tell me there's certain information it has to have. And if you don't fill it in, it is going to notify you. So I'm going to go through real quick. I put in my name, I got to put in a phone number, and I need an email address. It'll beep at me if I don't put that in. Okay, and then I know most of you, if not all, are filing for your company or your employer. If you are a third-party paid tax preparer, then you can click that box. Again, I've never had anybody who was a transfer agent, and this was something new. Then you would need to designate that you are a transfer agent. I am not, and I don't think any of you are. And then, depending on what state you are in, you may have to generate some 1099s with state information. If so, you can just click this add button here and put in the state, California, because my sample data is California. And then specify what type it is, if it's like state withholding, and then you type in the tax account number. And then it'll be listed. If you've got multiple states, you just keep adding until you've got them all in there. And if you've got any special state or local tax items, you add them on this screen. Go next. And if you have any recipients who elected to only receive 1099 forms electronically, if anybody did say that they wanted to have them processed electronically instead of mailed to them, then you have to get prior permission from them, and you can say yes here, and then it will know how to handle their 1099. And then this, as far as I know, this is still just strictly your own preference. Their EINs or Social Security numbers, do you want them to print whole or print with asterisks or X's? And if there's anything not there, do you want it to show as zeros or leave them blank? So I'm going to leave, since this is all sample data anyway, I'm not going to truncate that, and we'll leave that set to zeros. So now it's going through and it's reading all of that history from my Sage 100 data files, and it is preparing to get that transferred over into the Atrix system. So now I am not operating in Sage 100. This is all Atrix. And this is something new that they've added. If where it's saying preparing employee detail, in your head, you can just think that it's talking about vendors. It uses the same little pop-ups, whether you're doing payroll or 1099. Excuse me. So just letting you know, you're going to get an opportunity to review the information. And clicking next lets you verify in different groups of the data. And if there is any problem that it finds, it will be in red and it gives you an opportunity to fix that. And then once we finish verifying the information, we get the options to print our copies. And we'll look at all of that, and then you'll get the option of doing your report submission. If you get tired of seeing that, you just click that little checkbox there. Okay, so I am, first of all, going to make this full screen and scoot this all the way over. And you'll notice up here in this blue section, it's going to help guide us to double check our information. So verify recipient taxpayer identification numbers. So whether that's an EIN or Social Security number. So it's in blue here. That just gives me an opportunity to make sure I have filled it in. If I find I've missed something, I can type it in manually here, but I want to make sure I go back to my vendor, because if I abandon this and regenerate it all, I'll have to enter it again. So if you do find you make any changes, try to, at the same time, go back and update your vendor. So once I've verified my list, I go next. And now it's telling me verify that the check, if it's a federal employer identification number, is checked. You know, if it's a business and not an individual. Seems like they could have said that so much easier. So both my boxes are checked. These are both businesses and not individuals. So I go next. And now it's telling me to verify my recipient's names. Now, let's point out, while I'm working on this section, I can take this bar and stretch it over so I can see more of this information. That way I don't have to scroll back and forth so much. So since these are all businesses, I know I don't need any names here. And I'm going to go back and do the NEC form. No, miscellaneous forms. This is the NEC. How it looks with an individual. So I want you to notice I have some punctuation in here. So when I do next, it's going to tell me I have invalid characters detected in the names. So if I click OK, it is going to remove those characters automatically. If I click cancel, then I can manually change it. So I always just click OK, and it takes care of it. So it took out that apostrophe here. And then it took out my punctuation that was on tax consultants in the optional name. Okay, so there are recipient records with identical information. This is a false indication because these are all businesses, so I don't really have duplicates there. So I'm just going to cancel. And I don't know why it's giving me that. I'm going to do next. All right, click OK. Oh, it's because the optional name was the same as the recipient's company name. Okay, so it fixed that for me. That's good. And then I'm going to next. And so now it's telling me to verify the addresses. So quick way of looking down and making sure you've got all the address components for everybody. I'll do next. And then I have to verify income boxes. This is where if you printed out that payment history report, you can compare the totals on there to this and make sure that you're got everything recorded. And then this is where if you had that checkbox of direct sales of $5,000 or more, that would be checked here. And then if you were doing a, you have to do states, this gives you a chance, well, actually we'll do next, and it'll tell us to verify this filing state. So if you don't have to file with that state, then you don't need to do anything with that. But if you did, it would tell you to verify the dollar amounts for them. We didn't set it up, it won't be there. I'll do next. Okay, so now we're done with our verification, and it's letting us know this is our final opportunity to review or make any edits. So I can click double check and go back and review it again, or I can agree, which I'm going to do. Thinking, I think. Don't you love when this happens and you've got people watching you? It has just gotten stuck. See if that happens. There we go. Don't know what it did. Okay, so now Atrix is, they're promoting, they want your money. But in all honesty, for many of our clients, it is actually cheaper to let Atrix do the printing and the mailing of those 1099 forms. If you look at what it costs you to, go out and buy the forms and with the envelopes, and then you got to pay the postage, Atrix, they get a bulk discount, so they're able to do that cheaper than most of our clients. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later too. But this is just letting you know what they're doing. And we're going to talk a little bit about that here. So it will default to the complete 1099 e-filing service. So I've only got 2 recipients. So the minimum charge is $27.99. If you've got, depending on how many recipients you have, there's a charge of $2.80 for each one. And for your e-filing, if you needed to do that, or I'm sorry, this would be electronic delivery. And then regardless of filing of, with that $27.99, the filing, what they call the e-filing with the IRS for your 1099s and your 1096 is included. And if you designated states, those would be included. Now, if you do want to print them yourself, you can click this checkbox here for other options. And you can also, if you want to just do a dry run on your own, you can do that too, just by checking this. So I can say, I'm going to print the recipient 1099 copies. And if I do have enough that I have to e-file, I can do that. And again, it's going to give you the per vendor chart. Well, per is here and here's the total amount. And then the minimum, again, is still $27.99 that you're going to have to pay. But if I don't have to e-file and I was just going to print on my own, or I'm just doing a trial run on my own, I can tell it to print. And then this is just a reminder, in case somebody missed the fact that if you've got 10 or more IRS forms you have to file, these are all the forms it's counting in that accumulation of 10. Okay, and I don't have any states, so we're going to see what happens when we go through this. Do next. And it's giving its little blurb again about, are you sure you don't want to e-file? And if you decide, yeah, they talked me into it, you could click your box there. And then this is just a list of what you have told it you want it to do. If you've been through this before, you don't need to print it. If you've never done it and you're not real comfortable that you're doing everything right, it certainly does not hurt to go ahead and print this. And this is all it's going to print. But that way, if you question yourself, oh, did I do that or didn't I? You can go back and look at that list. Okay. So it is loading up the report forms. So it's showing me here, I'm on report 1 of 5, the federal 1099 NEC. So if I was mailing them out, I've only got 2, so it all fits on one page. And normally what we do, we're helping somebody with this. So just a little informational there that we don't have to have the red paper for that anymore. You can just use plain paper. I'll say okay. And we like to print a copy to PDF just in case. Now, if you want a physical copy also, that is perfectly okay. I'll go ahead and just say print to PDF, and I'll just overwrite that. And then once I've printed, I just do next, and it takes me to the next form. So now it's going to let me do the federal 1096. And, again, that's just one page anyway. So I can print that to PDF. I could print a hard copy. I'm going to print next, or go to next, and I'm going to skip the printing. And so now the third report, this is the recipient 1099 NEC. So this is what, if I was mailing it, that I would mail. See, all 4 of these on one page are for Paul's Auto Pros. And now I have 2 pages because I do have the page for my tax consultants vendor. Again, I would probably print those to PDF and not for our purposes. And now we're going to get a payer copy. So this is your copy to keep. So there's one page that I've got that's got all the information. And then lastly, if you bought some pre-printed paper and it does not already have the NEC instructions on the back, then you can print this and include it with their copy. If it already had it, then you can just skip this. Okay, so at this point, we have a final option that we could do some e-filing. And what will happen if I had told it to do the e-filing is it would come up and it would ask for my account information. So if you have done this before, or somebody before you has done it and they've left your, the username and password information, you can just log into that. If this is the first time you've done it, either ever, or you've inherited it from someone else and you don't know what the password and login are, then I'm going to show you in a little while when we go back to the PowerPoint how you can log into Atrix and you can get that reset. I've had to do that with clients over the years, and it's really not that big of a deal. Okay, when you're all the way done, it comes in, it asks you if you want to increment the default 1099 calendar year. So I'm going to say no, because I still need to process my miscellaneous forms. Now, had I said yes, this would now say 2025 instead of 2024. I'm going to do my three things. Let's see, this one, I want to do the miscellaneous so I can show you what happens with individuals. I've got the correct calendar year, and if I had any minimum year to dates, I could put them in here. Now, this is going to take us through the same wizard. So I'm just going to go through this quickly so we can get to the grid. I can show you the important information. When you don't have to read those screens, you go through really fast, can't you? Okay, so that's the same message we had before. Full screen. Okay, so what has happened here is, because I'm on the latest version and I put in from on the vendor screen the first, middle, and last names, it brought it in automatically here. Now, if your version doesn't allow you to do that, and for whatever reason, we might not be able to install updates before you need to print, you could at this point just manually type it in. You know, a lot of times here under the recipient company name, that's all that's there. So, you know, you could do some copy and paste and edit, but, you know, I can, you know, like here, I could just type in anything that I wanted. And that's all you have to do. Because if you don't have the names, like if I do net, let me get through to the name part. So if recipient's TIN is a Social Security number and first and last names are not provided, anyway, it gives me a chance to go back and correct. So it recognizes that I was missing that information. So that's one of the nice things about Atrix. It does a good job of double checking things for you. Because I don't know about you all, but how often do you get to sit down and do something and not get an interruption? It's really hard. Okay, let me double check, make sure there wasn't anything else in Sage. I don't see anything, so I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint because I do have some more helpful information here. A couple of frequently asked questions. Do you have to e-file to use Atrix? And the answer is no. Like I showed you, you have the option that you can just print. But, you know, even if you want to print, but you are required to e-file because you've reached that 10 maximum or minimum threshold, I guess is the right way to phrase it. You can print the forms yourself and have Atrix do the e-filing. So there is that minimum of $27.99 processing fee. And then here is where you can go ahead of time and make sure you're enrolled. And you just go to https efile.atrix.com and set yourself up. And then also from there, after you have submitted, you can use that to go in and check the status of your filings to make sure things have made it to the IRS. I highly, highly, highly recommend that you don't run this any later than January I think it's the 27th. Yeah, 27th is the Monday of that last week. Atrix does put a deadline. You know, if you want them to print and mail the forms and you wait till the 31st, they may not go out and get stamped for the 31st. So please try to get that done ahead of time. And then the fee schedule, the current fees are always listed here at atrix.com. You go to Partners and Sage 100. And you know, when you all get a copy of this PowerPoint, you know, you'll be able to click on those links. And I do like to make everybody aware that, like, if you've got multiple companies or you have a lot of 1099s or a lot of even W-2s that you have to process, Atrix will give you some breaks. There are some bundled options, and some of those are listed here. And I've even had clients that have called Atrix to you know, work on getting a better deal based on their volume. But again, I recommend you go ahead and get that taken care of now. If you wait till the last minute, it's possible that, you know, they might not be able to handle their call volume. And remember, at any point, if you have any questions, just put that in the Q&A box. Okay, so what type of forms do you need? So if you are going to print them, you need the blank perforated packets that do 4 up. And you know, the red print federal copy is not required anymore, but the red 1096 is. And then some of the packets include envelopes. You can get those forms at any of your office supply stores. If you've got a printer that you deal with, you can get them from them. But if you go to sagechecks.com, you know, you can feel a little more confident that you're getting the right form in the right format. And then I like to give you a reminder that if you have to do 1099 miscellaneous and 1099 NEC forms, then you have 2 separate forms that you have to purchase with that. All right, I am not going to read through this. This is a little more detail about the printing. And then, because I do still have some important information to cover, we send out emails. You should have received an email by now. If you did not, either send me, you know, put me a note in here on the Q&A, and I'll make sure something gets forwarded to you, or you can email help@oasisky.com and let them know that you need the link to do your year-end appointment. So on that email, you know, it just takes you to the our webpage where you can sign up for that appointment. Just need your company name, first name, last name, and email. And then what version of Sage do you run? And here it will tell you how to do that. Sorry. And then we also ask some other questions so that when we call you to make the appointment, we know how much time we need to allocate. That is the reason for all of these questions. Okay, so again, if you've not received that email to request your year-end appointment, email help@oasisky.com, or if you can reach out to any of us, if you usually work with one of us, we can all help you with that. And I do like to point out, it's better to go ahead and get that scheduled if you want our assistance, because we do schedule them on a first come, first served basis. And if you wait until the last minute, you know, we may not be able to do it on your schedule. And not surprisingly, our offices will be closed on December 25th and January the 1st. And that is all I had. I can stay on for a few minutes in case anybody has any questions. If not, I thank you so much for attending. I hope it was helpful to you. And you all have a wonderful rest of your day and rest of your week.